It literally started in my grandfather's home, and that's the home I lived in when I went home as a baby. That was where the church first started, because my uncle, he was a Methodist church minister at Oyen at the time, and he ended up being filled with the Spirit after contact with Pentecostal people in Melbourne. Richmond Temple was a place that impacted him greatly. And my dad was running the farm, and he decided he'd start a church, and he just got a few people together he knew into that home, and that's how it began. It wasn't long before they moved to the Kai Valley Hall.
I'm Reg Gilly from Kyabram. I've been in Living Waters for 75 years, and it's been absolutely a great fellowship. Well, it started as Assemblies of God Fellowship in the Kai Valley Hall, which is 5 miles out. We were there for probably 12 months, and then we came into Kyabram and rented the Mechanics Hall. And then after Pastor John Job came to Kyabram, and that was in 1955, and he decided that the Lord told him to build a church. And we had £30 in the bank, and so we said, we'll start. And a lady sitting in the congregation didn't belong to the church, but gave him a cheque for £600, and he came down and bought this block.
I still remember that opening service on a wet year in '56, middle of the year roughly. I'd say it was probably June, July. We were there. We still lived in Bendigo at the time. Came across, it couldn't be not here. And I remember that service. It really impacted my life for the rest of my life, I suppose, as far as this church is concerned. John Job was here until. I can't remember the exact year, late 50s anyway, early 60s, about 61 was when A.T. Davidson came to Kyabram, a pastor that was the superintendent, as they called them in those days, of the Assemblies of God in Australia. And I was absolutely amazed. I'll never forget my Uncle Mervyn coming to tell Dad. He was on the board at the time. He said, "You can't believe what we've just got happening." He said, "We've got the Australian Assemblies of God superintendent coming to be our pastor to replace John Job." And this man's ministry to me in my teenage years was something that I can never forget. I can remember a lot of his sermons, and we had Wednesday night meetings when he used to teach, as well as prayer meetings they were, and Sunday morning services were great. Sunday night services were always, in those days, gospel services. It was a gospel message that went out, and that's what it was.
During the early days of the Assemblies of God, our whole meetings were basically gospel meetings and then prayer meetings every Wednesday night. I mean, I'm not talking about just prayer meetings. We're on our knees, seeking the face of God. And during that time, I believe that what's happened in Living Waters is the result of those prayer meetings. We prayed for Echuca, Rochester, Shepparton. There was no other Assemblies of God in Northern Victoria. We were, as far as I understand, we were the only Assemblies of God in Northern Victoria. And when they had the first meeting in Kai Valley in 1945, I was the first convert, so they tell me.
I'd like just to say what a great legacy Living Waters has had. I believe it was the first Pentecostal church outside of Melbourne, wasn't it? And basically all the other Pentecostal churches in the Goulburn Valley have come out of that, I believe, for that legacy they've left. And of course the other churches, great churches around the Goulburn Valley, all got good legacy.
We changed the name to Living Waters back in about 1976, I think. We came up with this Living Waters, and we put a fountain out on the front out there. That's gone now. And of course people used to come down and put soap powder in it and all that. But that was a great time. And when we built this church here, it was terrific. The area at the front we're going to have prayer and praise, we dedicated that to the salvation of souls. We dedicated the auditorium to the salvation of souls, but it hasn't happened yet. But I believe it's on the move. And I believe the Lord is going to do something great in the kingdom of God. I believe the Lord's going to do something very special